on, everyone? I'm Harry Potvin, and welcome back to another episode of the H Panel, the show where we bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk mental health. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by author and mental health advocate Isabel Hunt. So thank you so much for joining me today.
No worries. Good way to spend my afternoon, talking about mental health and opening up the conversation.
Before we get too into it, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, what kind of made you choose psychology as a field, stuff like that?
So I grew up in Toronto. I went away for university, and then when I came back, I've been all over in terms of living places. So I've lived North York, Scarborough, Italy, the beaches. So I've kind of lived all over Toronto. I actually wrote my book. I'll just kind of go in a little bit in terms of the book. I wrote it about 7 or 8 years ago, and it was finished 2014. So this is kind of a relaunch, I like to call it. Yeah, so I chose psych because I really loved science. I really love the idea of learning about the mind. And it was just such a perfect combination. And I even now I kind of realize that looking back, psychology is such a great combination in terms of understanding people and their behavior and social aspects, and as well as the science as well. It's a fantastic thing to learn, I think. Anyways.
Definitely awesome, yeah, and especially now it's like one of the more important fields of study, I'd say, with everything going on. It's like definitely getting more attention now. So focusing on the book that you wrote, which is called A Hidden Life, I feel as though, like, after reading the synopsis, it's like such an important message to kind of get across for viewers out there. So do you mind giving us a little summary of what it's really about and what kind of inspired it?
So it's about a young woman, perhaps she's in her late 20s. She has a busy career. She grew up with a mother who had mental illness, and she's kind of in a crossroads in terms of changing herself, in terms of how she views people, how she views herself, how she views her entire life, really. And then she meets a young lady. I won't give away all the details, but that relationship really makes her kind of think deeper about mental illness, really, and caring for each other. And it also is so the main character is also, she works in PR. I laugh because I used to work in PR, and she has a big client and whatnot. So a lot of other things are happening. And as I say that, it was important to me because just like right now, where the world's still turning, COVID's happening, but we're all living. The world's still turning. It doesn't stop that. To me, that's the same thing with mental illness. Just because you have depression or anxiety, the world does not stop for you. Your life has to keep going on. The world keeps turning. I'm finding so many parallels right now in terms of COVID and what it's done to society and mental illness as well. So I think a lot of things there parallel each other, and there's a lot of similarities. So that's the book.
Nice, awesome. And then in your foreword on your website, there's some seriously important messages that I've kind of found that I'd love to cover with you, if that's okay. Kind of the first one being how oftentimes the word crazy is kind of thrown into the mix whenever the conversation of mental health is brought up. And I know for me personally, I was really terrified to kind of tell my family and tell my friends about my struggles with mental health because, I bought into the stigma and I kind of just made myself believe that mental illness was for crazy people. So on that note, kind of what was the reception like from your family and peers when you opened up about your struggles? And then what needs to be further done in order to kind of eradicate that stigma from our conversations?
So for me personally, I was lucky in the sense that my family was very supportive. My dad had a hard time because he was born in Jamaica, and there's a lot of stigma in the Black community, especially immigrant families. It's big, and I've written about it, and I've blogged about it. So he had a little bit of a hard time, but he came around, and there's certain things I did that I think were helpful for him to kind of process it. Friends, I didn't tell for maybe 2 years. It came to the point where I couldn't separate it from the rest of my life. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm sure they kind of picked up on something, that something was wrong. So I actually wrote an email. I wrote a long email. I think to about 6 maybe friends, 6 or 8. And yeah, it was just a nice way to tell them all at once and write up my thoughts and what I was going through and what it's like. I've been lucky. In the last 20 years, I've had incredible friends and family support. In terms of the world, well, it's interesting because I'm thinking about when I first got sick at 15, that stigma versus now. Things have gotten better, but I still think it's stigmatized quite a bit. And that's why I wrote the book as well, right? Like, I was tired of the image that people use to represent people with mental illness. So yeah, we still have a lot of issues with stigma. Still a difficult thing in the Black community. Things have gotten a bit better, but again, COVID has done a lot of things, and one of the things is that it's pushed mental health to the forefront. Like, I've never heard mental illness be talked about this much ever.
Yeah.
Like this is probably history in making, right?
Right.
And again, it's that mental illness right now. People who are struggling, I'm sure they're realizing that it impacts every facet of your life. If you're having a low mood or anxiety or depression or OCD, it's with you everywhere. It's with you and your parents, with you at work. For me, I don't want to say I'm happy people are understanding now, but I think it's important to really talk about what mental illness actually is and how hard it is. Because we never really talk about how hard it is, and it is hard.
Yeah.
I will not sugarcoat that. So I do think we are we're at a turning point. I think things will get better. We just have to keep working on that. A lot of people are asking, will Black Lives Matter all of a sudden go away and stop being a trend? I don't know. But I say that because I don't think the mental health issue will be trendy and then it's gone. Because the ramifications of COVID and what it's doing to society is going to be there for a while. And I hate to say that, and I kind of shied away from saying that, but it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a 1 year, 2 year, impact. This is a 5 to 10, some for the rest of their lives impact.
Honestly, the first step, well, not really first now, since we've got the ball moving kind of, but the next step, I guess, because I find a lot of people who don't go through like that mental illness struggle don't really understand the difficulty towards it. So just helping them understand will kind of push it further and kind of get rid of the stigma, because a lot of my like family and friends were like, you seem so happy on the outside, like you're faking it. It's like, nope, I'm not. A lot of us can just put a mask on, and that a lot of people need to understand that. So that's the next step. And going back to COVID, like just thinking about like the little kids right now that are all, their whole, everyone's world is flipped upside down, but when you're that young and the world just completely turns, like it's gonna have some long-term effects. So
I think about students a lot right now in terms of university and high school, because high school and university was not easy for me at all. Like, it was good, like I still enjoyed it, but it was also difficult and challenging at certain times. So I honestly just keep thinking about them because this is going to be hard for them.
Both entering and graduating.
Yeah.
Especially.
Yeah.
Because I know my little sister, she's going into uni, like next year's her first year. She doesn't know if she's going yet. And like
September or the year after?
September, yeah. Well, supposedly, but the way all the rules are laid out and everything, like res isn't happening. Everything's online. The first year experience is out the window. Like all of her friends have opted out. So, and then, for all the graduating university students, like I'm thinking like you're trying to go out into the workforce. You're trying to figure your life out, and this just happens. I know a lot of fourth year like varsity athletes. This was going to be their last year of competing, and it's just not going to happen anymore. Like
Oh.
everyone's losing right now. Everyone has some loss right now. So
I heard on the podcast recently the word grief,
mm,
because we're all grieving. Not necessarily for people who are losing, some are, but for all the milestones, for all the, summers and funds, all everything you just mentioned.
yeah,
We're all grieving because we're all losing, the things in our lives.
right.
I don't want to make this all about me, but so I graduated into the double cohort after cohort. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When they cut. I'm sorry, I'm tired. They cut the 13th grade, right? So it was double the students, and university shifted all the entrance averages. So if you were getting like 82 by the end of the semester, so June, they might have cut you.
Oh wow.
And then I graduated from 2008 into the recession. So
Man.
I understand. I don't completely understand, and I think that's important to say because I don't know what it's like living in a pandemic as a student. But I understand how something could kind of be thrust on you that you have no control over, and the challenges that come with that.
So another really important theme that you kind of brought up in your forward is the question of what if. And in this mentioning of the question, you include that, and I'm quoting here, mental illness is that strong of a force that can take you from a regular functioning human being to an ostracized, invisible entity living and squatting on the streets, rummaging through garbage and roaming from corner to corner, coffee shop to coffee shop, unable to function or maintain simple relationships. And I know for me, when I was struggling kind of in silence, even if people didn't recognize it, it became a huge part of who I was. Like I mentioned before, like I was able to put that mask on. I had a real quick temper. I was super sensitive. I was really moody to like a point where people would call me out on it and think, what is wrong with this guy? Like he's just a hothead. So on that note, I have a couple questions for you. And the first one, I guess, would be, what would you say to someone that's kind of struggling in silence, who doesn't really want to get help, whether it's because they don't want to be labeled as crazy or weak, or because they're kind of skeptical about therapy and self-help solutions?
I think right now, there are a few things I'm telling people and encouraging people to do. And one of them is to, like, I know you said, how do you approach something where they don't want to talk about it, but I'll say this much.
Yep.
Anyone who I've ever told about me having mental illness has never reacted in a terrible way. Most people want to help you. I have stories, stories with teachers, teaching assistants, bosses, or the boss's boss, and everyone I've told, or I kind of broke down and I couldn't hide it anymore. They did not react in a bad way, and I think all that fear is it's kind of built up in our head.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense, and it's built up in society, right? No one talks about it in open. And I also, again, I do want to emphasize things are shifting, and people are having that conversation. So I would encourage them to, take a chance on people.
Yeah, it's that step is so hard, but like everyone I've talked to, when they take that step, they're like, best decision of my life.
A lot of weight off your shoulders.
Oh man. And that's another thing for people in that kind of position, like you were mentioning, bosses and coaches and teachers, like to have them, be open and like willing to listen is so big for kids.
Oh yeah.
Because my swim coach at university, like, man, Shantique, the amount of times I went to her, even last year, and just broke down before a practice, like maybe half the year was spent in her office, and she was just there willing to listen, like, giving me breathing techniques that helped her when she had her moments, and just like those little interactions were huge.
I think another thing is too, right? Now and before COVID, a lot of people experience low mood, or they have a family member, a mother, or brother who has it. So it's not as far away from you as you think.
Right.
It's much more common. I think it's 1 out of 3 now that will have mental illness in their lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll mention a quick story at high school. So high school, I had this teacher, and I had been in her class for about 3 years. So she knew me well, and we had a good relationship. And I was having a very difficult time with everything, anxiety, OCD, and depression. It was grade 12, and we had a final project due, and I went to her, and I was just, you could tell she was like, whoa, like she knew right
Yeah.
away, like, okay, calm down. I didn't tell her about the mental illness aspect, but she knew something was wrong. And she was like, don't worry about it. And she just extended the deadline. I've never told anyone that story until quite recently. I actually posted it in my Instagram story. And then I secretly messaged the friend that was my partner on
Yeah.
that project because I scrolled back, like I strolled back to her and I was like, "Don't worry, we got an extension." But I never told her
Yeah.
how about it. So I messaged her and she laughed, but she's like, "I wish you had told me, but you're so young." So yeah, you gotta give people credit right now and give them a chance.
Hmm.
And again, especially right now, I'm telling you, so many people are struggling. It's not going to be not shocking either, right?
Yeah.
Like you probably have, you know what I mean? I feel like teachers and bosses, etc., would be like, yeah, I understand. Like, how could they not right now?
Oh, especially now. Yeah. My other question for that, what if you could tell a younger version of yourself, the one version struggling with her mental illness, like kind of at your lowest point, one thing, what would it be?
These are some spicy, hard questions. um, so I think about this a lot, and I do blog about it, and I talk about it to my friends. What would I be like? What would my life be like if I didn't have depression, anxiety, and OCD? Like, would I be higher up in my job? Would I be married? Would I have kids? But also, would I be as strong? Would I be this really resilient? Would I have all these amazing relationships? Would I appreciate psych and science? And um, to go back, I think I would tell her it's going to be okay.
I know that I say that a lot too, and I know it. Like some people are like, "Oh, that's cliche," but honestly, like younger version of me would want to hear that. It's so simple, but sometimes you need simple.
Yeah.
I think what a lot of actually this leads into my next question, which is great. But I think what a lot of friends and peers and family kind of do is they try to take it into their own hands and like try to tell you which way to go, which for someone in that low point might not be the best solution. They would like to figure it out themselves and don't really. Well, speaking from experience, I hated being told what to do. I was told to go to therapy for 3 years by like my partner, and I was like, no, just because you said that, I'm not going. I'm stubborn. So
Yeah.
you can give them like a slight nudge, and I've brought this up in a couple other interviews. You can give them the slight nudge, but ultimately it's up to them. So I guess my
Yeah.
next question for you is, what are some do's and don'ts for family and peers that are dealing with someone who is struggling with mental illness?
I've definitely been where you are in terms of people trying to help and they're hurting me. Like it's hurting more than it's helping.
Hmm.
And I also want to make note that people won't get help until they're willing to get help. And I know that's hard to hear, but you can only be ready for certain things, right? Like I've definitely done CBT for my OCD, and I was not ready,
Hmm.
and it did not end well. So I just wanted to mention that. So in terms of helping someone in your life right now, I actually did a post about this, and I posted 17 reasons. So I'm just gonna go over maybe perhaps some of the top ones. I think the phone call is helpful right now, and the text, and it doesn't have to be, but I think if you do that as a surprise, I think it's really nice for the person because it's nice to know you're thinking of them, right? And it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be something elaborate. Just say hi or like, what's up or how are you doing? I suggested a morning kind of wake up call because to me, in my experience, it's very hard to sleep properly with depression and anxiety. You can sleep too much or too little, and mornings can be really difficult.
Yeah.
There are points where I was staying in bed from Friday night to Sunday night. So again, something small and something a little bit easier. And I also want to say that doesn't take much from you. Like it's not like you
No.
have to. You just call the person, and that's something I really want people to think about right now. Don't drain yourself trying to support someone because it's not going to be good for either of you.
Right.
I know you love the person, but you have to do what is good for you as well, and make sure your mental health is intact because that's not a good situation.
Yeah.
And I feel like that can lead to a lot of resentment as well. When I got sick in high school, I used to have a lot of anxiety, depression over my academics and other things, and I would go to my sister like crying, like hysterically, like I don't even know how to explain it, but I would cry hard, and she would say, "Go wash your face," and it wasn't in a mean way, but she was saying like, "Take a second, go breathe." It's calming. It's a lot of people would probably say it's a type of meditation, but she'd walk me to the bathroom the first couple of times, and I would just wash my face and calm down. And again, that's not that hard to do, right? That's not really asking much of you.
Yeah.
I think a walk with a person is really good as well, and in a lot of ways, the fresh air, leaving the house since we're all stuck or apartment.
Yeah.
And again, I think you just get that time to pause and breathe. There's a very long list.
Yeah.
Those are some very good kind of like you're in the situation and you need something to do ASAP. But one thing I'll add is don't try to solve their problem.
Right. Yeah, that's a big
I know
one.
that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
No.
That's not what you're there for. For a long list of reasons.
Yeah.
Don't try to solve it. Like I have stories, yes, about that as well.
I remember when I went to a therapist, like when I started, I would go like here and there in those 3 years where I rejected it. But when I started to really go for myself, I went in the first time and she's like, "How can I help you?" And I said, "Are you going to fix me?" And she was like, "No." She's like, "At the end of the day, it's up to you. I'm here to listen and kind of nudge you in the right direction." So, yeah, be there, listen, keep it simple, let them know you're there for them, and that's what you got to do.
It sucks to say this, but on some level, it does take willingness from the person.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that, right? Like they have to be willing, able. That's a very sucky thing to say, but again, if that person's not ready to move forward, the harder it is.
Right.
On that note, I would say look into medication, which is again a whole other conversation, so I won't go deep into it, but a lot of antidepressants are meant to boost you so you can, in the first month or so, you can bounce back and do things you weren't doing. Like you can get out of bed, medication should help you with that. Some people wean off, some people stay on it. I kind of tried to stay off of it for 7 years, and then I went to my therapist and he's like, "Yeah, let's try some meds.
Yeah.
Let's try some drugs because this isn't working for you."
Yeah.
I think is also important is asking them how they're doing because, society has this terrible fake thing of, "Oh, how are you?" And they don't expect you to say how they really are. They expect you to say, "Oh, I'm good,"
Yeah.
or "I'm great," or "I'm fine." And actually, now that I've been so much better, my mental health wise, I will respond with good or great, and people will be like, "What? Why? Why is things? What do you mean you're happy?" It's again like all these weird social things, and asking a person how they are, and really listening, and not pushing them, but giving them that space to actually really say honestly how they are.
And then if they do just respond with, "Yeah, I'm okay, I'm fine," don't like pry it or try to like dive in more. They'll tell you when they're ready.
Yeah.
Kind of a big theme that I've talked about a bunch on my channel, like here and there, is comparing yourself to others. And I know in the world of mental illness, and I'm sure you do too, there is a ton of comparing. Whether it be comparing your body type to that of a fit person on Instagram, I do that all the time. Comparing your face to a celebrity's, comparing your mental health progression to that of someone else's. It discourages, quite frankly, the hell out of you. And it really kind of gets in people's heads. And for me anyway, it always motivated me from really reaching, the full recovery process or kind of like getting the full help I needed. So what would you kind of say to someone who's struggling because they compare everything about themselves to the successes of others?
This is gonna need like a glass of wine. If my friends watch this, they're gonna be like, yeah. Okay. Oh God, that's such a like huge topic. And to be honest, I've dealt with that since probably I was 12 or 13 because my siblings were very successful people. I probably only got better at this maybe 6 months ago. 6 months ago or a year, so I'm fresh to that as well. But let me give some good advice. One of my doctors who I was very close with, she used to quote, or she kept asking me, "Why are you trying to run the same race with a broken leg?"
Mm.
And by that she meant, the rat race, all of that. She's like, "Why do you keep doing that?" And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, my leg's fine. Don't worry. I want to get to, and that's I think a lot of ambitious people, as well as everyone else. Like, I don't think you need to be ambitious to relate to that, but, her quote really made me stop and think, right? Like, I had mental illness, I had other things happen in my life. Why would I expect things to be the same or a similar situation? And I don't say that like, oh, you should give up. I say it more like, give yourself self-compassion. This whole cookie cutter business is a lot of nonsense. Like, have a house by the same, go to university, college, like, have kids. Yeah, it's a lot of bullshit. Yeah, that's a very hard one, and I really do feel for people. And Instagram has not helped.
No.
A lot of people are like, oh, just unplug, but it's also addictive, right? It's gamification. Like, they made it for you to be addicted to it. Another thing too, like, this is kind of not for everyone, but like the cliche, like everything at its time. This sounds like, I'm not okay. This again, I don't want to sound weird or like an asshole, but everyone's gonna go through something.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone's gonna have a low point. Everyone's gonna have hard things. You can't really be a human being and live a life without hard things to happen. So yeah, and you don't know. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors. Again, that's cliche. Everyone says it, but I have stories like no one even myself. I'm not showing. I couldn't get up early today, or I've eaten takeout for the last 6 weeks, or I'm not talking about that. I try to like do a little bit, but no one really does that, and it's so easy for us to focus on bad things instead of focusing on a good thing. I would try to focus on a plan right now and how you'll get there. I think that's really important. And also think like everyone comes from a different family. Even that. I don't want to bring race into it, but certain families, certain races have different backgrounds, I'm sure everyone's learning about that right now. And that came to the front of my mind, but that aside, everyone has different education, everyone has different siblings, different family, situation. So statistically, there's no way any of us would have to live the same. Like, that makes no sense. No. Again, I think that's something society tricks us with. And another thing is like, you will be good in your future, and you need to focus on that and your own kind of accomplishments, even if they're small, and being self-compassionate again.
Yeah, there's a picture I love, and I think it was in one of my classrooms in high school, but it's a picture of a tree, and there's a squirrel, a dog, an elephant, a fish, and a human all around the tree. And the human goes, okay, now climb. Mm-hmm. Because everyone is starting at a different point. Everyone has different, strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. The squirrel's going to get up there, no problem. The elephant isn't going to do anything. So, the elephant can't compare himself to the squirrel. It's just like, I probably explained that horribly, but
it was good.
You get what I'm saying.
I think I thought of, there's the one of like the fish will die on land, but if you put it in water, it's swimming like.
Yeah, that's another one.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I totally get that quote. It's a good one too, right? Also with academics, grades, career choice. Now I'm in a different stage of my life, but I've definitely struggled with that for a very long time.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think we tell young people enough. Like, you have a very long life to live. Like, I know this feels like the end of the world, and it felt that way for me. And I hate that too when adults like, oh, it's not that, but it's only 4 years. You have a lot of time to
Yeah.
try to figure out what you want to do. And I try to tell my story as much as I can because my story is very much so, I had to explore, I had to do other things to make sure I love what I do now. And the stories they've given me, I really hope, the new world or whatever focuses a lot more on experiences and relationships
Yeah.
and just living a full life,
Hmm.
not necessarily a cookie cutter one. It's funny we're talking about this because this morning I was making my bed and I was like, capitalism has really made depression and anxiety bad.
Yeah.
Like, I think if we took that away, I don't know. I don't want to keep saying it. I don't know what system would work. But if you took away all that pressure, to have the new place, new house, like a pool, whatever, I think a lot of people would be just chill. That creates so much anxiety in people, so much.
Yeah. Like you have to be here at this stage in your life, and if you're not, what are you doing?
Yeah, and I think also, I in the last 2 years again that when I'm, my better mental health, I'm like, what am I trying to like? What am I running to? Why am I rushing? Like, we're all gonna die in the end. And I mean that in the sense that you have lots of time, and why do you want to rush things? Like, enjoy where you are. Um, and when you get those, I also can tell you when you get those things, yes, you'll be happy for a bit, but it will plateau, which I learned in psych. And also, like you'll keep raising the bar. Again, there are other problems that come with those situations. You're always gonna have challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going on like 10 rants.
No, it's perfect. One thing I try to share with, I definitely shared it with my sister because, actually, I'm just going to use that example. I shared this with my sister because, she was going into university, and as she was kind of picking, because she got into Western, and she was really stressing out. And I was like, why are you stressing out? And she said, because the program I pick now is the one I have to do for 4 years. And I was like, listen, girl, I went into animal biology, which was pre-vet, and I almost got kicked out of school for having such a low average in first year. And I switched. And it was fine. No one talks about my first year. Like, obviously my overall average kind of, hurt a little. But my last year of university, I was finishing with 80s. That first year doesn't define you. And no one told me that when I was coming in. So when I got my first midterm back, it was 30%. And I called my mom and I was like, I'm done. I was like, I tried it. I failed. I'm going to try to do something else. I'll go into acting. Screw it. I'll do it. But like, no one tells you that, the first year is all about trying to figure yourself out. And if you got to switch your major, switch your major. It's actually a lot less or a lot more common than people think.
Yeah, no, so many things. Like, I hate that they ask people to lock in their, like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life when you're 17? Like,
yeah, it's like, I don't know.
The older I get, the more I'm like, that's young. Like,
yeah,
like from 15 to 22, like, that is young.
Yeah.
I think not everyone knows themselves to say, and I think also another thing about society is we don't talk about failure enough. We just show everyone's success. Everyone's like, we don't talk about failure.
Yes.
And it really, again, messes with people's heads and mental health. Okay, sorry, I was going to say, since you love basketball, that the documentary, the Michael Jordan.
Last Dance. Love that documentary.
I called it Save the Last Dance once, and my friend's or boyfriend was like, anyway, I love that doc because it shows, like, people are told, you're not going to play. There's so many challenging stories, like, and then he became the greatest basketball player. Like,
he didn't even make his high school team that first year.
Yeah, and the other stories too, right? Is Scottie Pippen. All their stories. We don't talk about failure enough at all.
Yeah, that's my other beef with Instagram. I'm more in this scenario. I love Instagram, I do, but I always kind of am like, don't read too much into it. Do as I say, not as I do. I post a lot, but it only shows you the highlights. and the successes and like when people are looking their best. They don't look like that all the time. They don't have that success.
Like, they took 100 pictures and that's the best.
Yeah, they took 100 pictures. The people showing their success probably, like, if you're looking at celebrities and stuff, they took like decades to get to that level of hard work, of rejection, of all this stuff. But I'm guilty of it too. I would look at like, okay, this is a terrible example, but the Joe Rogan Experience, the podcast, he did like $100 million deal with Spotify.
Oh.
And I was like, man, why can't I get to that? I started in March. This guy has been like in the business for decades.
He's very, very well known.
Yeah, he's worked his butt off for years to get to that level. So that's the other thing with Instagram. They don't highlight the failures, they don't highlight the hard work that went in, and it's just kind of giving like people my age and people younger like these unrealistic expectations for success.
I'm very interested to see like what social media would do to the younger generation. I almost feel like Instagram should come with a warning, like this may cause depression.
Yeah, literally.
Use with caution.
One of the two major questions that I'm kind of using for this season of my show is focused on hope. And you watched my episode with Asante, right? So he had another interview with Kevin Frankish.
Yes. I didn't see it, but I heard you guys mention it.
Yeah, and Asante mentioned, it's a hard time, but it's not a hopeless time. And I love that quote. So for you personally, what are some ways that you can share to the viewers that you've been able to keep hope in times like this, with the pandemic and the racial divide and, everything going on where it seems almost impossible at times?
The cliche saying, this too shall pass. Again, it's annoying, but it's true. And I understand that much more now than I did 20 years ago or 10 years ago. Things will change. Life is about change. Unless you're dead, you're going to change. Mm-hmm. And that was something I think was hard for me too. I couldn't accept change, for various reasons. Change was hard for me. But you kind of have to embrace the change. Again, grass is always greener. It's not.
Yeah.
Everyone's grass is going through something. So, this will pass, and I think you have to embrace wherever you are right now. Whether that means you learn how to make time for yourself, if you realize this career isn't for you, if you realize what you really valued in life. For me right now, I keep thinking about all the times I traveled, and I'm like, I need to shift my money and focus on that. I'm sure a lot of people are realizing they buy too many things and materials and possessions, and that it doesn't really give you much happiness. There will be a time when things are different in a better way. Embrace the situation as much as you can, and find your supports. Mm-hmm. I posted this I tweeted this, and it got fairly big. You need to build your support system, and I would say that even pre-COVID, if you have mental illness, but right now, obviously, it's next level. Even if you don't have mental illness, I had doctors, social workers, psychiatrists, teachers at school, my psychologist at my undergrad and master, my family, my friends, and my support system was huge. And I write that in a lot of my posts because I want to be full disclosure. Like, not everyone has that. Mm-hmm. But also, you have to try to build it yourself, right? I had to go talk to campus, help. I had to go, find a doctor. I had to go, look for things, look for courses like mindfulness things. Healthcare is free in Canada, but you still have to understand how to navigate the system. And a lot of things, unfortunately, aren't accessible or is not covered by OHIP, I should say. So, again, you need to make the system work for you and find out how you're going to navigate it. So that would be one of my bigger kind of messages to get across. Figure it out and figure out, because again, we're in this for a long haul. Yep. And I'm realizing that too every day, right? Like when I do things and it's a habit and it's a bad habit, I'm like, we're not going back. Like tomorrow. Like I need to know. I need to think about how I'm going to get through the next however long, right?
Right. And kind of going back to you saying we're in this for the long haul, I'd like to get more into the Black Lives Matter movement that is going on right now, because I know from, just conversations I've had and things I've seen, what a lot of people don't seem to understand is that this isn't a trend, and that it's going to take a lot more hard work and incredibly dedicated time to kind of get that justice that is deserved. So, what do you think the next steps? Because we're kind of, in the middle of it right now, kind of. What do you think the next step should be for us to kind of achieve success with this movement?
I'm glad you mentioned it because a lot of my close friends are saying a lot of this is a performance.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's a word. So people are like, oh, here's my post on social media, but they're not really doing anything or supporting anyone or reading. And it is hard too, right? Even brands, like I started seeing black girls and black images, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah,
I get it, but then it feels fake because you're just doing that to appeal to the trend. That's not helpful in my opinion.
Yeah.
In the long run, but not right now.
It's great that like Aunt Jemima's not a thing anymore, but they had like a century to get rid of it. It's kind of convenient that it's right now.
Yeah.
Or like it's convenient that the first Black Bachelor just got freaking voted in. Some of the things I'm like, this is a little weird. It's not weird. It's obvious, but it's like,
it is.
Yeah.
It's opportunity.
Exactly.
I think it's nice that when companies come forward and they show the books.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we have one black person works here, and how they're going to change.
Yep.
I think doing the work yourself, and a lot of black people have expressed this. Don't come to me and ask me questions. I'm tired. I have COVID too, like our COVID world.
Yeah.
It's hard for me even to see the images of black people struggling. It's not fair to your friends to ask them to explain. I would encourage everyone to go read about it. If you're really that passionate about it, go read it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think not just reading it, but understanding how we got to 2020 and what got us here, and letting go of things they thought were okay or symbolic of something, because it was not.
Yeah.
For me, there are two things that really bother me about this entire situation. A, when people realize and they're like, "Oh my God, that was happening," I'm like, for me, my first thought is, what do you think was happening? Like,
yeah.
I get it. This, COVID was perfect catalyst, George Floyd, like it all kind of lined up. But it does bother me a little bit when I, even friends, I'm like, what did you think was happening?
You didn't see all the other things?
Yeah, like, I get it, but at the same time, it frustrates me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, it really bothers me how passionate people are about sports, art, music. Those aren't the only things Black people contribute to. There's a whole other list. Things that are ignored, like, innovation, founders, entrepreneurs. There's a whole set of other Black things, obviously, but the things in society that everyone's, loving and enjoying, think about that. Like, we're, those are our people. Mm-hmm. And you're going to go watch so-and-so play football or basketball and then go home and be racist. Like,
yeah.
I'm not everyone's like that, but I will say some of them are like that. And, who owns the teams?
Mm-hmm.
That alone should tell you something. Think about things a little bit more deeply and question it. Yeah, and I'm seeing, like, young people do all these TikToks to, like, Black music and Black dance. Again, that really hits. That was another thing that, really irritates me because, you're enjoying the music. This is helping you get through COVID, through lockdown, and how much are you really reading about Black people and trying to make some sort of change? Probably
not much.
Exactly. And I think it also takes a lot of self-reflection and starting with yourself and your workplace or your home, talking to your children, educating each other, asking hard questions. And I know that's difficult for people, and I think that's a big thing too, because for them to admit that means that their ancestors did those things, and also because of your ancestors in slavery, you have a leg up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very hard for people to admit.
Yeah.
Or admit they're racist or think racist things or they're, stereotypes. The whole long list. I think that's hard for people, and I get it. But if you need to process that, maybe you go to therapy if you want to really process why it makes you uncomfortable or angry. Start with yourself and start with your family, and just don't treat this as a trend because this is our lives.
Yeah. It's not a hashtag.
Yeah. Another thing is I'm learning too. Like, I'm not a perfect Black person. I'm learning, and by that I mean I'm learning the history.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things I'm reading, I did not know.
Yeah.
And I say that to encourage everyone to read and learn. It's not every Black person knows everything, and we're all kind of learning right now. And it's even made me actually think about how I treat my other racialized friends, right? Like Chinese, Indian, Pakistani. I think about too, right? Like, what stereotypes have I made jokes about? Nobody's perfect, but we need to figure this out together.
Mm-hmm.
And another new concept that I never really thought about was that Black people can't solve racism by themselves because it's white, it's white people who need to change, right? Like, there's nothing we can do. And I know, like, people might get offended I'm saying straight black, white, but for the sake of the conversation, we can't change the systems. We can't change, what's taught to our children. Like, we can't really do that, right? Because who controls the system?
Right.
Who are we interacting day to day, And I that was something I didn't really think about before. Yeah, and I think education is also huge in school. We should know these things. A lot of things people are talking about, we should have learned in grade 7, 8 history or grade, high school history. Why do we not know all those things?
On that education note, like, if I had $1 for every time I heard Christopher Columbus's name, like, I couldn't give less of a crap. I'm sorry, but you're definitely right. We need to implement more. It might have been you that posted it. There's a post going around that said, like, Black historians I wish I learned of in high school, and I feel like that's really important because we're only learning one side of the story.
We're giving credit where credit's not due.
Right. Yeah. Another huge question that I'm trying to ask in these episodes, because there's been a lot of debate, and I know I've had too many conversations with people trying to prove me wrong on this topic or other people wrong. What would you say to people who are firm believers that Canada is not racist?
Oh, God. Oh, my God. I mean, I feel like those... I almost feel those people are purposely being ignorant because the evidence is so strong and so in our face that you can't... I don't know. I feel like those people are either full of hate or serious denial or... I don't know. But even how we treat Indigenous people and that long, terrible, terrible, terrible history. Yeah, I mean, I think it's education. I think it's looking at your friends and really thinking about, how they're treated and the stories. I think it's about believing the stories and not being like, oh, are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure, though? Yeah. Maybe, no. Just believe the story and go with what that person is saying. And I mean, statistically, again, the research has been done. You can't deny, so much of it. Oh my goodness. They did a study on carding, all sorts of, issues in the justice system in Canada. There's lots of research and lots of, backing up that it is a reality. And, even our own Prime Minister did blackface. And he did it 3 times. So, yeah, that's, again, we're talking about so many things that could be a separate webinar, a separate pod or interview. Yeah, so that's another conversation. What I wanted to say, because again, some people don't want to look at certain things, or they don't, some people will say, oh, Trudeau was just having fun, or it was really funny at the time. Think about your own life. If you grew up in Toronto, did you have any Black teachers? I had one.
Yeah,
I don't think any of I think I had 0 in master and 1 in high school, and that was it.
I didn't have any.
Exactly.
I had a
And
I had a black vice president, vice principal in high school, and it was a huge deal.
yeah, yeah. So even that, or even like the doctors you see, or the physio, or anything, even at your college or university, how many black people were there?
Very
And
few.
again, think about the stats and how much we make of the population. Why aren't we in all these spaces? Um, Even what the government did recently and getting rid of applied versus academic. You
Wait, they
can't
got rid
deny,
of that?
yeah, it was a huge issue because it was mostly black kids that were going to apply. Like the teachers would put them in applied, and it pretty
Wow.
much you after you do applied, you can't get into university because
Actually, oh, wow. I
yeah,
didn't even.
it's academic courses and applied courses, and there are like some other schools I forget what they're called, but they're I forget. I think it's called BTI, something more like it's different skills, but um, yeah, I mean, every black family, I feel, has the story about things happened and they happened because they're black.
Mhm.
I know this is off topic, but you also think about, we're black people are dealing with COVID and like all the challenges of life, and then dealing with that as a black person. So, sorry, that was just important for me to
Yeah.
touch on, like double, you know,
Hmm.
the issues. But yeah, so the pride, I did want to talk about it a little bit because I was telling people, my friends, during our conversations, I could tell you in grade 9 which boys would be in applied
Yep.
and or transferred to another school. I could tell you right away.
Yep.
And majority were black.
Yeah, we had a lot of the same.
Yeah. So that that it's a weird time, right? Like everyone's being called on their shit. People are changing. I mean, but how long will this change last?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like the performative stuff is great. Like kind of convenient, but it's great. How long are you gonna keep that same energy?
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't know about that applied thing. That's nuts. I didn't even think about that.
My dad, I don't like to talk about certain family stories because I feel like with my siblings, like certain stories of their story,
Yeah, of course.
It happened to me, so I don't want to talk to it. But you know, we were one black family in like majority white neighborhood at that time. My dad went to every teacher's parent interview because he knew what could happen.
Mm-hmm. Canada, you are not innocent.
Oh no, not
Gosh.
at all. I hate that. Those are two things I hate about that people say about Canada. It's diverse, and woohoo, we all hold hands because you can grow up in Little Italy in Toronto, not speak English for your entire life, and be fine
Mm-hmm.
and have a full life. There are pockets. There's racism. There's government housing. I hate when people say the multicultural thing and the racism thing. I hate that too.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
But yeah, so these are all really heavy topics. I just wanted to comment on the book for a second.
Yeah, of course, of course.
I feel like we talked so much heavy topic. They were awesome, but one of the reasons I wrote the book was because the image of mental illness was very. I like to call it. I think it's seafoam green. It's it's like this.
Yeah.
In clinical spaces, like psych wards and stuff, and it was olden days, but probably still in some places. Like I think people think of that. I think they think of like that movie with Jack Nicholson. All these terrible, terrible images. For me, it's about being a young black woman who not a normal life, but maybe I'm just like everyone else, right? It's not like I'm some people, like you said, like some people would not guess I had mental illness. I think there are so many like hidden stories and we have that terrible image because no one talks about it, right? And I think shifting it is what I want to do with this novel, right? The story is very, I kind of want to say mainstream, but I gotta find better words for this. But it's like a modern woman in Toronto is a setting, she has a job. She's, like just regular people things. And it was very lonely for me. It was very lonely and isolating for a very long time. Especially when I first found out. I'm hoping people read this and realize, anyone can have mental illness. It's not just, psych ward or whatever terrible image they have in their mind. It's me, it's people. And, and I think it has a good message of getting to the other side, or at least to a point where you're feeling happier or more like you can handle things. But and it's also the story is also about connection, relationships, and love, and how mental illness can make that even deeper in terms of your sharing and talking about things.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like I hope it reaches kind of mainstream population, I guess, and people relate to it and realize how normal mental illness is.
Yeah, it's a lot more normal than people think.
Yeah.
When does that come out, A Hidden Life?
So, life's been very busy.
Yeah.
As you can imagine. I keep forgetting that I'm going through COVID and Black Lives Matter. So I have to remember that and not like run myself ragged. But and other things are happening, right? Like I wasn't feeling well, family stuff, partner stuff, like being, etc. So things kept getting postponed. And another interesting thing, and I think it's good to explain, I actually tried to launch it like 3 or 4 times, and I just not in the mental space or had the mental health to do it. And now I feel like I'm in a place where I'm like, okay, I could do this. I can get it to the people who I think should read it and need to read it. Things are aligning for me and make a lot of sense. And I don't want to say hard purpose, but things have kind of are coming together in a way. But all that to say, I'm hoping like last week of August, first week of September. So maybe in like about 6 weeks, hopefully.
Cool. Yeah, so stay tuned for that, viewers. And with that, we are done all of the heavy questions about everything. Once again, I want to thank you so much for coming on to my show. I really appreciate it. So now I've just got some rapid fire questions. Number 1, who are your top 5 singers, rappers, or musicians, dead or alive right now?
That's what? Oh God. Okay. Lauryn Hill, Beyonce.
Nice.
I would say Michael Jackson. I don't want to say Jay-Z or 50. Maybe actually. I love Jay-Z, but I'm not as huge as a fan. Oh, I would say Drake. I feel like I'm saying all the lame, like...
No, that's good.
But
yeah,
those are some of them.
That's like for Apple Replay Music or whatever. I don't know if you know what that is, but it kind of tells you who the artists you're listening to the most are this year. And Drake is like so far ahead of everyone on me. I'm like, great. I'm basic.
So I got mine as well. Like they did it around New Year's, and I had Beyonce, Drake. I think I had Nicki Minaj, and then I had Shawn Mendes.
What?
I'm so embarrassed. I was like, oh God, no one's seen this.
So next question. For me, 2 of my favorite guilty pleasure comfort foods are pizza and chicken wings, and I messed up last week and I asked my vegan friend this question. But on that note, for you, is it pizza or chicken wings that takes the crown? And I've got a question after that for whichever.
Which one is better, pizza or chicken wings?
For you, yeah.
That's hard, but pizza.
Pizza? Nice. And then so for pizza, I've got your best pizza joint in Toronto, your top 3 toppings, and of course, does pineapple belong on pizza?
Yes, pineapple does belong
yes.
on pizza.
Let's go.
I don't know why people hate that.
I'm 4 for 4.
You know what's funny though? I think certain things turn people off. So I hated, you know that, I forget what they call it, but not shepherd's pie. It's like a pie crust with chicken and stew in it.
Yeah.
I hated that for a long time because it looked like pie, but it was meat inside.
Yeah.
Or like when they make food that looks like desserts that look like food.
Mm-hmm.
That also makes me like nauseous. But so pineapple. Um, I order a lot from Pizza Nova. I still think it's a great place and great. Um, I still love it. I know people would probably look at that lowbrow, and there are a lot of foodies in Toronto right now.
Yeah.
And on Instagram. Yeah. So years ago, an ex of mine would order chicken feta. I think it's sun-dried tomatoes,
Mm-hmm.
and it's amazing combination.
That
Like
sounds
I
good.
still order it like all the time. Yeah, it's good. Some of my friends will come over and they're like, "What is this? Like that has to be pizzas for you. I won't touch that." But it's delicious. Yeah, I'm thinking of pizza places. There's one that everyone knows. It's on Ossington. Is it Pizza Libretto? It might be. There are a couple of restaurants in Toronto that are known for their pizza.
That combo you mentioned, that sounds very Italian. Tomatoes and feta, kind of. I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm Italian. I feel like I should know that, but I don't.
Order it and tell me.
I will. I'll send you a review. Next one. Top 3 shows or movies that have gotten you through quarantine to this point.
Okay, so Mindy Kaling has, oh god, I forget what it's called. She has a new show, and it was a South Asian star. It's really funny. Like, she's growing up in high school, and it's about her experiences with, like, having to wear hair. Yeah, it was good. Like, I think one episode I just cried. Like, I cried for half an hour because it was triggering. But it's a really good show. And it was so weird to me because the star is from Brampton, so, I believe, so Toronto, and it's like a mix of races. So it's like her Chinese best friend, her mixed best friend, and just different types of people. And it reminded me of Toronto. Like I grew up in Scarborough, and it was weird watching it because I'd never seen anything like that on TV other than Degrassi.
Right. Yeah.
But anything mainstream American or whatever you want to call it, that was good. Sadly, Tiger King.
I knew it. Everyone says that. I knew it.
I hated it at first. I was like, I'm not watching that garbage. But then it was such a perfect thing to turn your mind off. Like,
yeah.
My brain shut completely down.
No thought was needed.
Yeah, like I hats off to the Netflix or whoever did that because the world needed it. I argue with people. I'm like, I don't think it would be as big if it wasn't for lockdown and everything.
No, I don't think
it would.
I completely agree. That was like the perfect situation.
Yeah. But there are some other great shows. I'm trying not to fall into the web of binge watching. It relates to mental health too, right? Like I would watch like 6 hours and I'd start feeling physically sick, like just sitting there. And I think it's just such a waste of time sometimes. Like hours of your life on other people's creation, and some of it's not that good. And I get it though. Like I get TV is like a really wonderful thing to kind of check out and relax and do with your family. But yeah, it's. I think we should kind of balance out a bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And then finally, if there's a viewer watching this who's going through a situation that was similar to the one you experienced, or just someone struggling with their own demons, or even someone really just struggling with the current events going on, what would you want them to hear?
Okay, this is similar to what would you tell your younger self? It's similar. I would say, again, this is cliche and everyone says it, but it's true. How you talk to yourself in your mind is not how you would treat, like, your best friend. Like, if your best friend came to you and was like, oh, this, I feel terrible, I did nothing today, I stayed in bed. You would never say to her, like, oh my god, you're so lazy, like, why didn't you get up, why didn't you do this? You'd, like, comfort her and be like, oh my god, you would comfort her and you'd be super nice, especially right now, right? And you'd probably relate, but we never treat ourselves the way we should be treated, and, with the same respect and compassion we treat others. And, yes, build your support team. And I would say think long term. This was another thing that I danced around and I wasn't saying to people, but this is, the other week I was walking, I was like, this is 2020. Like, 6 months, in 6 months it's going over. Like,
I know.
This is it. And things aren't going to drastically change. So think about that. You know, and that even for myself, like I've been eating terribly. Again, like, can I eat terribly for another 3 months? Like that's gonna be really, you know, I'm gonna have a hard time getting, you know, coming back from that. And that's a lot of strain on your mind and your body. So, you know, find support, think long term, and be patient with yourself.
I love it. And with that, we are officially done the interview. Once again, I thank you so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun. And
it was. Thank you for having me. I'm very flattered that I could be your guest.
Of course. And to all my viewers, I will see you guys next time. Thank you for watching another episode of the H Panel. I really appreciate you guys. For more episodes of the H Panel, click this button right here. And if you want to subscribe for more videos from myself, subscribe is right down below. Thanks, guys.